Hey everyone, Tim Higgins here with A&I Solutions. Again, I'm doing another set of videos here. I'm kind of up in the air how I'm going to do these. They're not really scripted, kind of like my other ones, so we're kind of going to do these on the fly. For those who know, I do a lot of stuff with APM, Application Performance Management, with my company. And what APM allows us to do is it allows us to look for certain things like memory leaks and things like that within an application. So one of the most important things that I do, in essence, is look at code and help clients talk about code and how to look for things like memory leaks. One of the things that it really irritates me and that I find mostly is that especially junior developers and people, getting too much lost into the IDEs that they're using and forgetting the underlying concept of what the programming is. Now, with saying that, I'm going to do either a set of videos on help bugging, help triaging, or I'm going to do a set of videos on basic C and C++, or maybe both. But with saying that one, this video is mainly about linking. So if we look at, now this is funny because I said IDEs, but I use this as my starting point. Inside, if you install Visual Studio, which there are free versions out there, this is the Enterprise 2015. I know there's newer versions, 2019 is the latest. But what I do is underneath tools, I create my links to the tools that I use. It's fairly simple if you've never done that, but it's a good idea because I've got one place. I used to keep it on my toolbar, but then my toolbar got too cluttered. So you just put external tools, you say add, give it a name. Here you just give it the location, here you give it the location with the exe, just like you would from a command line. And then here, I'm not sure if this is optional, but I always put the path to wherever the tool is. I don't think it's needed, but for example, if you look at Perkmon, it's because I have a blank one there. But if let's just go up and look at the one we're going to be using, which is the command line. Well, let's go to this one. So here, and I might do a video on some debuggers too, but if you notice here, I got the path all the way to the exe, and then here I got the initial directory, and that's all you gotta do. So then it puts them in your little toolbar here. And we're going to start with the command prompt. Now, I recommend to start with the command that comes with Visual Studio. And the reason I'm saying that, even though the whole point of this video is to get away from IDEs or to understand how it works with IDEs, this automatically gives you a path to the compilers and things like that that you need to run code, to compile your code. So we're going to start with, we're doing a C++. So if you look at the CL, which is our main compiler, and if you open that up, if we say Windows CL, that should tell us notice it's the command line compiler. Okay, that's what we're going to be using for our C++. Now for, is it CMS, CMSC? No. Oh, we'll get to that in a few minutes. There's one for the C#, but right now I'm thinking about C++. What I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and go to my temp folder. Let's see, I think it's on temp. CD temp. Oops. I don't know if I could count my fingers in the right location. I think this folder is empty. It is. Okay. So, oops. Now, I'll bounce between. The bad thing about when I type in command line is I'm used to working in Linux, so sometimes you'll see me type something like ls or something like that. So just ignore that. Like in Linux, it's just clear. Here in CLS. Okay. Now, with saying that, what we're going to do is we don't need Visual Studio anymore, so we'll go ahead and collapse that. That was really just a link to the command line. And you can right-click and put on your desktop where you're going. But let's create a file. Now, we're going to do C. Okay, so C++ and C. Code-wise, there's not really that much difference at the base level, but we'll talk about that when we get to it. So first thing we'll do is I will do a notepad. And we'll call this, so I like to play guitar, so it's one of my hobbies, so we'll call this one practice, maybe. Yeah, that's fine. And we'll call it practicing. Okay, now I'm using Notepad 2. It's really just a little bit super version of Notepad, but it's not much different than Notepad. So the first thing we're going to do is include our standard I.O. Now, this is not a programming set of videos. It's about linking. But like I said, maybe I'll do this. Reason I was thinking earlier, maybe I'll do some basic C or C++ for those who have no idea what this is. Now we need our main method, and within our main method, we need, I'm sorry, I did this, the standard IO, just so I can do print. Our good old favorite print F. And in this case, we're going to say, do you want to, oh, I can't type. Now you can hear this vibration. I apologize about that. I'm in a hotel and there's like a desk with a sliding glass window and that thing just vibrates like crazy. And that should be all that we need. We'll come back later and add some more things to it. We'll see if that works. And we'll save this. Now the cool thing is, now if I could look, I have my practice. So what we're going to do is we're going to compile it. Now, remember earlier we were talking about the CL, right? So there's the CL, and we'll kind of play with it for a few minutes. I want to CL practice, C, and then what I'll do from there is, let's just run that as is, and then we'll talk about it, okay? Now, notice all this gibberish. This is our linker version, our compiler version here for x86. That's very important. We may or may not talk to that, but we'll come back later. Let's go look at what it created for us. It created our object file, and it created the exe for us. So now if I run the exe, all right, so it worked. Do you play guitar? Can I make this any bigger? Okay. So now what we're going to say is, let's go ahead and delete. Let's go ahead and delete all of our exes. Sorry. Okay, let's make sure I didn't delete everything. Let's delete all. I put the dot in the wrong spot. Let's delete all of our exes. Exes. Try one more time. Third time's a try. Let's clear this window because it's getting messy. Now let's go ahead and delete our object file. Okay, and that should just leave us back with our code. Let's just take a peek at our code, make sure nothing changed, which I know it didn't, but just for fun. Nope, that sounds right. So now what we're going to do is we're going to look at this CL a little bit. So if you notice, whenever I did the compiler, there was a lot of, I shouldn't have cleared it out, I'm sorry, but there was a lot of Windows, a lot of .NET gibberish about the linker version and things like that. So if you don't like that, you can say CL practice, and then what we can say is no logo. That will get rid of the Windows gibberish. And there's a cool thing called F for file, E for executable, and then we'll give it a name. Let's keep it lowercase. No, let's keep it uppercase. Let's keep it play guitar.exe. Now I want to give it a, well, this is a warning label. If you look at Visual Studio, and if you go to your properties, I could pull that up, but I don't want to, but if you go to your objects, I think it's in linker, you can choose your warning label. Warning 4 tells me everything, okay? And then for that should create me a file. Now notice we don't have all the window garbage, and if I say go, now I can run it again. Play guitar? Yes. Do you want to learn to play guitar? Okay, so let's do the same thing. We're going to delete, and I know my text is at the bottom of the screen, so let's get some real estate. I can't do that with this. Okay, so let's do it this way. Nope, not die. Directory. So now let's go ahead and delete our exe again, and let's delete our object file again that was created. And now we're going to do it one last time, but this time we're going to compile it to C++. And that's pretty tricky because if you don't know what you're doing, you would really just forget to add TP. Ta-da! And now we have a C++. If I do a dir, we got the same thing, and if I run it, bada bing, bada boom, we got the exact same thing. Okay, so that's pretty cool, but let's say if we, let's delete all this again, delete exe, delete, now I could put all this in one line if I wanted to, but we're just keeping it simple. Just delete our object file that was created, and that just leaves us our code. Okay, so what we're gonna do, what was our code? Type. Okay, so what if we want to add a method to this? So let's go ahead and do that. Again, I'll open up our handy dandy notepad to edit this. And let's say I have a method that says, do you want to play guitar? What if we say void, no, I'm sorry, not void. We'll leave it as an int. And we'll say secret. Okay, no. Let's say play, okay? Or you know what? I don't think it's important, but again, we're kind of doing this on the fly. And what you can do, just for kicks and giggles, just pass in a value. We'll pass in an int. just do this. Now, here's something cool about C++. In here, we get to use a printf, and we'll say the secret is to practice. Okay. Now, so now if I save this, let's say, and then in here we want to say practice. And I'm going to pass in a value of 0. Okay. Let's just pass in 1. Truth is, I don't need anything here. I'm just trying to, put some values. Technically, you don't need any values. You could just say, do I want to practice, blah, 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 blah. What happens if I try to compile this? Let's see, where's my this one. We don't care if it's C. We'll leave it as C and not C++. Okay. Notice my warning. It says, hey, you got an undefined practice in here. So that's what the warning level 4 gave me. What happens if well, first, let's just go see what it created. So it still created the object, it still created the exe. What happens if I run it? Look at that. So that's really odd because if you think about it, if we look at it, practice C. Oh, what happened? Oh, it's practice. I'm sorry. Type. Okay. If you notice, the method is now here. But what happens if I compile it in C++? Okay. Now it's an error. Okay. I probably should have deleted the things in the file. So let's delete. Oh, what am I doing? Exe, delete, obj. Now I should have nothing but that. Now what happens if we run it as, compile it as a C? Notice we have an error. So what we found here in this little demo that we were doing is that whenever I called the method, whenever one method was calling another method, so our main was calling our practice method, the signature of the method was not above main. So C++ threw an error in that case, but C did not. And that was very interesting to look at the two. Okay, so let's make C++ happy. So if we go look at this, again, we'll take a peek. And what we've got to do in C++, the method being called has to be above the method calling it. So let's go ahead and modify that. Now, with saying that, your signature has to be above the calling method, which is what I just said. So we're going to move the signature up here. And this, if you don't know what a signature is, I apologize. And we'll have to teach that in another video, but it's very simple, self-explanatory based off what I'm doing. Now, with saying that, I see another error, but let's look at it real quick. So if I do, let's compile it as a C first. Okay, we got a warning. I'm going to ignore the warning for now because I think we lost something in this process, but that's okay. Let's see what it gave us. Notice I still have my exe, and I can still run my exe, and it runs just fine. Probably should capitalize that. But now let's go ahead and do this. And let's go ahead and try to delete this. Well, there's no try, now I can. And you probably should know I can as many times as you see me do it. Oops, if I could type it in correctly. All right, there we go. Let's look this with our CS file, and now we're going to compile it as a C++ file. TP, toilet paper, just kidding. Notice now it's a complete error, and if I do this, it didn't create the exe. So in C++, it's a little bit, well, let me put it like this. In C, it doesn't stop you from making mistakes, okay? In C++, it's a little bit better at checking to make sure you're doing everything correctly. So now let's go modify that. Let's clear our screen. And we need Notepad, well, Notepad, practice. And the only thing it's saying, fairly simple, but see how easy it was to make this mistake. Okay, that's save, we're going to close, and now we should be able to execute it now. And then let's see what it gives. Notice we got it there. It's on reference, it's fine, don't really care. This is just kind of put together, and look, it works just fine. Okay. Now, one thing I want to do, because it's driving me crazy, is I want to edit that. Oops, sorry, I can't do that one. Practice, right? Okay. That needs to be capitalized. It's driving me crazy. Okay, so now let's say, for an example, this is great for this scope. Okay, now we can play with it, and we can say if, let's do this, if want to play equals 1, then tell me to practice. If it kicks and giggles, we'll return here. Okay. Else, we'll do a little else here. And we'll just do it like this. And then in our else, we will say sorry for you. Okay, and that's going to return a 1. What do we say? Return 1 for positive, 0 for negative, and our default, even though we don't need 1 because it will never be reached, is going to be 1. Now let's test this. Let's see if everything works. Let's go dir, and let's delete these other ones. Well, you know, we don't have to delete them. We'll override them. It just makes it clean. So let's go ahead and do that. Oh, so we made a mistake. So we're missing our thing. So let's go ahead and fix that real quick. Now, again, the point of this kinda is whenever you do performance monitoring and this stuff, you see a lot of people making very commonly stupid mistakes. Now, the IDE can kind of help you with that. So I missed to close that. The IDE can kind of help you with that, but you kind of want to be able to do it anyway. So I got this warning, unreachable code. And then if we want to just make it clean, let's do this. I could just kicks and giggles get rid of this last line, and that will fix that problem. And then close, and then back over here we can just get back to it, recompile, everything's nice and neat, and of course I want to learn to play guitar. Now, with saying that, what happens, let's take a view. What happens if you look here inside of our page, and hopefully you can see this okay. This is local to just this file, but let's say if I wanted to share this method with other files, right? Other CS files. So now we want to move it out. We want to move it out into what's called a header file. So the first step is to move this into what's called a header file. So let's say Notepad. It's probably easier if we just do it this way. Well, let's get rid of all this stuff first. Let's say dir, just so we know that we're starting fresh, right? Okay. Excuse me. So now let's go ahead and peek at this one. Oops. And then what we want to do is we want to take this and put that to a header file. So let's create a header file. And we'll call the, see, this is called practice. So we'll call the header file secret.h. Okay. As we all know, the secret to playing guitar is basically practicing. Practice. Okay, so in the header file, the first thing we want to bring over is our include. If I can spell it. Now, I know some of my text strings have boo-boos in them where I'm not basically reading them to see if it's proper English. I don't really care, and you shouldn't care either. Who cares? It's just string values. So I'm talking about in the printf stuff. What's more important is you pay attention to what the commands are and how the linking works and how easy it is to see the debugs and resolve the debugs. That's kind of what I'm working on here. So as I was saying, the first thing we're going to bring to our header file is the include the standard IO. And now, whoops, now what we need to bring over is our signature, which is really just practice. Okay, and that's it for secret, for our header file. Okay, so we've cleared our screen. We have our source file, which if we look at it, excuse me, and this has all of our code. And remember, the goal here is to move this to a file that it can be shared. And if you notice, I put the word "the" in there when I shouldn't have. That goes back to that. Who cares? This is not a correct sentence, but that's fine. We're not here for that. We already created our source file, though. To move that out, source file is secret, and basically it just has these. It basically just has the signature. Okay. So what we want to do now is we want to make sure we create our source file. So let's go ahead and let's do this, Notepad, and we'll create one. We'll call it secret.c. Okay. Okay, so in our secret source file, in our C file, what we want to bring over is the, and let's just copy it, probably easier. So let's just save this. Well, first we want to make sure we have our header file. So in our header, it's going to be include, and then it's going to be the name of our header file, which is the same name as our source file, but with an H. Okay, and that should be fine for that. Now, if we do, again, I like starting fresh. Everybody knows that by now. So we have our secret header file, we have our secret source file, we have our practice file. So let's look at our practice file. And what we want to do is bring this over into our source file. And I'm just going to cut it out of here. Make sure I don't have. Okay, that should be fine for now. I'm going to save this one. Oops. And then we're going to view our secret source. So we're going to paste this one right here. Okay, and I need one more bracket. Okay, that should be all we need to do. Let's go ahead and save this one. Okay, and then if we go, let's just peek. You know what? We got to take the. We got to link the practice with it. So let's do Notepad. And instead of doing this, what we need, I like to have it at the beginning, but what we do is this. I like to have the beginning because it's easier to see. There we go. That should be all we need. Now we shouldn't need Studio, but it's good to have it because it's here, but it's also in our source file, so that should be fine. All right, so now we just need to compile it and run it and make it happen. First thing we have to do is if we create CL, we'll do no logo. Our files first. So we got these C's we have to compile first. Okay, so we'll say CL. I'm going to do a shortcut here. I'm going to do my no logo first. Okay, and then I'm going to say I want to compile everything C. Now there's a couple things to show, which is pretty cool. I can actually do this. Let's say I want to look at the preprocessor and I want to see what's produced. Now that's pretty cool because it creates my I file. If we take a peek at it, take a peek at that. Oh, see, it's too big, sorry. Let's do a Notepad. Let it run. But the point is that creates my I file. So if we look at it in Notepad, which was probably a better idea to begin with, this is our preprocessor. Okay, program once, I was going to put that in there, but talk about it later. Normally stick that in the header file. That means include that header only once. And as we go through here, it kind of looks at what the preprocessor would create. Now, the truth is, we don't really need that. I just want to show it to you because it's pretty cool. If you were doing things where you wanted to see, like, let me think. For an example, if you were using macros, or if you were using preprocessor derivatives like ifs and things like that, then you could create the IDE file and take a glance at it. So let's clear that. But what we really want to do is build our object files. Remember, the object files is what creates the exe. So we can build the object files, and we can link the object files. So if we do CL, again, I'm going to do my no logo thing. And then I want to do all the source files, and we're just going to compile them. Hey, look at that. That created our object files. So now we have our two object files. Now we can link those together. And the cool thing about this, though, is you notice you can move your object files around and things like that without the exe. So if you're, anyway, that's another video, but if you're in a browser environment, you can move things around, you could do that. I like to hit a fresh dir just so I can see the names of the files. So now what we got to do is link them. So what we can do is, again, the shortcut, the command is link, and this time we're going to our out files, and I actually want to output to learn guitar exe. Look at that, no errors. We now have a learn guitar. All right, so see, that's pretty cool. So what did we do? So we created a file, which was our, oops. So we created our C file, okay? And in our C file, we referenced our header file that we created, which has the method inside of the class file. Now, this is really cool because now I can move this header file around. I can use it in other source files and so forth, so forth. But what if I could move it to a DLL and open it up in Visual Studio? Or not Visual Studio, I'm sorry, C#. Wouldn't that be cool? Okay, so the first thing what we're going to do, first let's clear this. I don't have to do this, but it makes it easier. What I'm going to do is create some new files. Let's do type, we'll start with our secret. And what I want to do is, we can leave our header file as is. And the only thing it has in it is our practice in this. Okay, so that's fine. I do want to change one thing though. Okay, and here, all I want to do is add this at the beginning. Like I said before, this just tells the compiler to run this header file once. That way, if it's used more than once, if it's referenced more than once, it will only be loaded once. Okay, so let's go ahead and save this. Now, there's nothing I can do since we're going to be thinking about Windows. I can use a standard call if I wanted to. I'll probably do a video on that later. But basically, it tells the compiler to use Win32. But right now, we're just going to stick with the basics. Okay, so that should be good. If I recompile this, where's my compiler? Sorry, I don't want to retype it, but it's okay. So that would relink it, and everything still works. Okay, so we're good. Okay, not CLS, I'm sorry. All right, so there we go. So what I want to do though is I want to delete the exe. Truth is, I think I should have recompiled it to get that other one, but that's okay. And we want to start fresh, so what we're going to do is delete our object files. And what I was getting at is I probably want to rename these to, oops, I didn't do a star on that, did I? Seriously. Apologize, it's getting late. Let's just do this. This is another reason why I like to keep this clean, so I can see what I'm doing. Okay. Here we go. Now that should give us a fresh, and it did. Now what I want to do now is take secret, and I want to just stick it in a new file, and we're going to call it notepad secret.cpp for C++. Okay, now this is important. This isn't important, but since we're talking about the Windows world, we're going to go ahead and jump from C to C++. So let's go ahead and delete our C file. .c. There we go. So now we got our C++ file. Now if we go to practice, we shouldn't have to change anything because our header file is still the same. Alright, so just for kicks and giggles, let's take a peek at our secret.cpp, and everything's fine there. Okay. Now what we want to do, now that we've got a CPP file, we need to create, let's think about this. What we need to create now is our definition file. Okay, so before we create those files, what I want to do is clean up our secret file here. I want to get rid of some of this. First thing we got to do is, I'm surprised this even worked, we got to include our header file. Well, no, I'm not surprised. You don't need the header file here, but we're going to do it anyway. Because we map those two together. So what we're going to do is headers secret.h, and then we want to include our standard IO. Now we don't have to because it's in the header file, but I'm going to do it anyway, just be safe. Wait. Yeah, that's fine. Okay, so again, I don't have to do this because it is in the header, like I said, and this needs to be closed off here. Okay, but what I wanted to do is make this a little bit simpler. Okay, because we don't need all this. This was just kind of eye candy at the beginning of the video. There we go. That should work. That's the main thing I wanted to do. The secret to playing is to practice. Okay, that's fine. Now, if we go look at our header, let's go ahead and clean it up a little bit. Notepad, secret, header file, program once. Again, we don't need the standard IO. Even though it's best practice to me to put it in the header file, so if somebody looks at this, they'll look in the header file, he's using the standard IO. But in this case, I'm just going to take it out, and we're not passing in a parameter, so we're good there too. And you know what? I probably should make this a void. So let's go ahead and do that again. Okay, let's close that. I still have it over here. Yep. And in here, we should call this a void. There we go. Okay, easily done. So that's a little cleanup before we get started as linking those together. Okay, so the first thing we got to do is create a definition file. Basically, definition files is nothing. There's a lot of stuff has to do with definition files, but more importantly, since we're creating a DLL, it helps the linker understand some rules. I'll put it that way. One of the rules is what methods do we want to export. So let's take a peek at our secret. And the one that we want to export is this void practice. So if we create Notepad a file called secret.def, and yes, we want you to create it. Now here we put exports. This tells the compiler when it creates the DLL what methods we want to be basically, I'd almost say public in a way. And here we're going to say, what did we say it was? Practice. Okay, does it spell the same? Yep. Okay, that's pretty much it. So let's go ahead and save this. Now there's a lot more to it, and maybe do a video on it later, but most importantly, you have a file, it says exports, and then what methods you want to export. So if I create another method, and if I don't put it in here when I create the DLL, it won't be where you can get to it. So the next step, let's take a peek at what we've got. So we've got our practice C, and then we have our, we don't really need this anymore, but I don't want to delete it because we're probably going to take the code out of it. You know what, we can always write it again. Let's just make this clean. Okay, so what we have is we have our CVP file, we have our file definition, and then we have our header file. So next thing what we do is create our DLL in the lib file that's inherited. So let's do that real quick. Okay, so let's make a clean version. There we go. So if you do /B. It's a lot cleaner. Now, if we do, because this other stuff we don't care about. Let me see, CL, we're going to go ahead and do our double 4. We know those commands, right? And then we've got LD. LD will create the lib and the DLL. Okay, and so now we need our secret CPP, and then we need our secret definition. And let's run it. And then we do a dir. And now look what we have. We have our lib and our DLL. Perfect. Okay, so now what we're going to do is create a sample file just to test this with. We'll call this one, I don't really care, guitar. We'll go back to our secret, learn guitar.cpp. And again, we're just sticking with the C CPP doesn't really matter in a way. It's just best practice and naming conventions, but we're doing that because it's C++. Okay. Yes, create. Now this is fairly simple. What we're going to do is include, if I can spell right, include secret.h. Okay, so what's called, don't need dot after that. Yep, secret.h. So we include our header file. And then what we need is our main function. Okay, and you'll see this main in many different ways, but main is obviously the start of the program. And again, I'll say this before, I'm not doing a video on programming, but I can later. And then here, we just have to call our main method. So now what we need to do is clear our screen. Nothing else, you remember that from this, right? So now we're going to compile our application. So it's CL, W4, to get our warnings. We want our application, which is learn guitar. Okay, and now here what we're going to do is link to our lib directory, our lib file, sorry, which is secret lib. And that should be it. So now if I say dir, I've got an exe, patience, patience, patience. And if we say learn, there we go, it worked. So what did we do here? So we created our secret CPP file. Okay, and in there we basically created our header file to help link that. Okay, and then what we did there was we created the DLL and the lib. Now in our C++ file, if you go look here, what we did was basically referenced the header file. But when we did our linking, is it still up here? Already? No, I guess I already cleaned it. When we did our linking, instead of the other linking that we did before, this one went to the lib file. Okay. If you remember the other one, we created the objects, and then with the objects, we linked the objects together. But in this case, we linked it to the lib. So now let's look at creating a C# application and pretty much doing the same thing. Okay, so I want to make sure that we get the right name, which I believe was practice, and that was a void, so we should be good with just that. Now, one thing you have to do here is we have to bring in the DLL. So let's do this, DLL import, and the name of our DLL. In this case, the name of our DLL was secret.dll. And then here we'll make this a static, extern void practice. Okay. Now again, I'm not going to get into the programming thing here, but it's pretty straightforward if you've ever done C#. So that should be all we have to do. Let's go ahead and save it. Basically, okay, so a little bit. You know, main starts off, right? So you have a public class, and then your main basically is pointing to the method that is pointing inside the DLL. And here we're importing, remember when we create sorry, it's late and I'm drawing a blank. Whenever we created the file to say this is going to be the output DLL or the output method that you can link to, that's what this has to match, okay? And it's our diff file, but I was trying to think of the best way to explain that. But basically in our diff file, we said the practice method is going to be public for people to use. So that's what this is. Okay, now that we've saved this, we can close it. And if we go back over here to our command prompt, start fresh, we now have our managed file, which is here, managed code. Now, whenever you think about compilers can basically look at different architectural processors. So if I wanted to compile to a certain processor, out of the box, when you think about compile and managed, a lot of times it geared towards any type of compiler, and you may not want that. So you could always point, see if we can see what kind of compiler I have. So if I do an echo percent processor, sorry, what kind of processor I have. Pretty sure I could tell you, but this is just a shortcut so you can find out what you have. So I have an x86, so I want to make sure I compile this for an x86 code, right? But let's see what happens. So if I use, so remember, that is for C++ and C. This is for C#. Okay. Learn. Oops, no, not that one. What is my? Oh, to learn. Sorry. And then let's see what that does for us. Ta-da! Now, if I used the code earlier to tell it what processor I wanted to go to, then you would have to do that. But let's look at this first. What happens? What do I have now? I have a toLearn exe. So this toLearn is C++. Remember, learn. So if I just say learn C++, thought I'd save that, but I didn't. Okay, there we go. But now what happens if I do toLearn exe? Wow, look at that. What just happened? Exactly what I was just telling you about. So let's go fix that. I don't need to debug it because I know what it is. This one right here, bad image format, again, we want to make sure that we tell it to compile to match R right here. There we go. Oops. Oh, I need charge. Give me a second. Okay, so sorry about that. I had to pause it to basically plug it up. So, all right, so where are we? What is my processor? I apologize. I do these videos late at night, so I get kind of tired. Well, this is x86. I'm surprised we had an issue. Let's go ahead and let's. What are we doing? dir delete all.exes because I don't care about the other one. Let's go ahead and see if we can say CSC platform x86 and then what's the name of our file? Let's go to CSC platform x86. I'm going to target x86 and then oops, let's re-import it. Okay, see what that gives us. Oops, that was a boo-boo. Easy fix. This is not an option. There we go. There we go. So the compile success. Let's see what we have here. toLearn exe. Bada bing, bada boom. It worked. So what we did was kind of cool. I deleted the C++ exe, but you could easily recreate it. But what we did was we created our. Let me back up. So we have our secret. I'm looking for the code. Here's the header. Oh, there's the code. I forgot it's a C++. So if I look at my secret C++, okay, I have a method here called practice. I put that method into a header file. Okay, and then in that header file, what I did was we compiled it and we created our definition file. Well, I'm sorry, we created our definition file first, which tells us we're exporting this method. Okay? So then what we did was we linked our file. We compiled it and created our lib file, that's what I was looking for here. And then whenever we created our exe, we just used the lib file and we referenced the header file. Okay? And that created our C++ exe, which I deleted. And then, you know what? Give me 1 second. That should be it right there. Maybe, I don't know. Let's go back, because it's easier if it's there when we talk about it. Yep, it's there. So that created our Learn Guitar exe. Okay, so now what we did, let's go ahead and clear this. And then with that, we had, with our secret, technically I'd put these in folders, right? So then with my DLL and my lib, we created our CS file. No, I'm sorry, we created the DLL, which is here. So I'm kind of bouncing around, and I apologize. So let's do this crazy, okay? Because now we can make sense. So the first thing we did is we had a secret CPP file and a secret header file. Okay. With that, we were able to, and then we, based off of those, we created our diff file. Okay, our diff is our output. We compiled those into our lib file and our header file. Well, not really, our header file was already there, but we compiled it into our lib file and DLL. Okay, then to prove a point in our C++ application, what we did was we referenced the lib and the header, and that created our C++ application.exe. Okay. Then for our managed code, which would be our C#, and where's it cool, C#, managed code, what we did was we referenced the DLL. That was pretty much it on that one. And that allowed us to create our, because if you remember, if we do our type to learn, see, the only thing we did here was we just referenced the DLL. And that allowed us to reference it. Anyway, so again, I hope this kind of makes sense. I'll probably go back and watch these videos and be like, oh my God, it's so miserable. Why did I even do this? But the most importantly, what I want to do is show you how you could do all this without the IDE. Like I said before, so many people make mistakes because they're so dependent on the IDE and they don't really understand the underlying of what's going on. And I do know a lot of times, especially in C and C++, a lot of your errors have to do with the linking. Okay, now this is dynamic linking, and it's really not hard to understand. It's just, you know, go back and watch the videos. Those commands I put in there. If you want to know what they are, pause the videos, take the commands down like the linking, the CL. Like I said, the CL, I don't know if there's a CL help. Yeah, so anyway, so you'd have to go back and look at the commands and see if, or if nothing else, just like this platform, right? So I'm focusing on the platform x86 and things like that. You can just hit MSDN, see what all the commands mean, and so forth, so forth. But the most important thing here is to understand that the IDE is made to help you. It's made to help your life move faster, but it's kind of pointless if you don't know what it's doing. Anyway, so I hope these videos helped. I'll probably do another set of videos some other time. I'm on the road, so I'm extremely busy right now. But hopefully I can maybe either get into C# programming, C++ programming, or get more into some debugging and triage, especially with APM. Anyway, so if you have any questions, please reach out to me, and I hope you enjoy these, and I hope they're useful, and I hope they don't sound like crap because I'm tired. Good luck.